You've probably heard the story of Joseph Smith and the golden plates. It's one of the most famous origin stories out there. But today, we're not talking about what was in the ground, we're going to talk about the ground itself and the incredible stone box that supposedly protected those plates for centuries.
So, the story goes, right? It's the 1820s upstate New York. A young man named Joseph Smith is led to a specific spot on a hill where he digs up a set of golden plates. These plates become the basis for the Book of Mormon. But for us, the real head-scratcher isn't the plates, it's the box they came in.
Okay, let's really dig into this, because this is the whole point of our explainer today. The records weren't just shoved in the dirt, no. They were sealed inside a custom-built stone box, supposedly put there way back around AD 421. And that brings up a really big question.
I mean, think about it. How do you build something in the 5th century using only what you can find nearby that can survive 1,400 years of freezing, thawing, and soil movement in upstate New York? It seems kind of impossible, but the historical accounts actually give us our first set of clues.
Joseph Smith himself described it pretty clearly. He said it was made of stones laid together with cement. So this wasn't just some random pile of rocks, it was a constructed object. That implies some real know-how about building things.
And here's the kicker, from another eyewitness, Oliver Cowdery. The cement wasn't just holding it together, it was a waterproof seal. That's the key. So right away we know what we're looking for. 1, the right kind of rocks. And 2, the ingredients for a tough, waterproof cement. And this is where we jump from history to geology. A few years back, in 2017, a couple of researchers actually went to that same hill in New York to do a field investigation. Their whole goal was to answer one question. Could someone in AD 421 have found everything they needed right there to build this box? To figure that out, we got to understand the landscape first. The whole area is covered in these things called drumlins. Just think of them as huge piles of leftovers from the Ice Age. A massive glacier scraped its way south from Canada, and as it moved, it dumped all this stuff, clay, sand, rocks, boulders, into these long spoon-shaped hills. And would you look at that, this hill is a textbook example. You can see that distinctive shape perfectly. The glacier came from the north, so it left a steep end on that side, and then a long, gentle slope on the south. And that shape is absolutely crucial for figuring out what materials were available. So the researchers basically became geological detectives. They started mapping everything, the main hill, another one nearby called Miners Hill, and the whole surrounding area. They were hunting for the raw materials someone would have needed way back when. So what'd they find?
All right, first up, the stone. The box was described as having flat, smooth stones. So the researchers just started looking around, checking out rocks in the ground, in old farm walls, basically anywhere they could to see what was common in the area.
And they found 2 main candidates just lying around everywhere. On the left, you've got sandstone, which is great because it splits into nice flat pieces. And on the right, you've got granite. The glacier tended to round it out, but it can have really smooth surfaces. So, which one would you choose?
Well, this chart makes it pretty clear. Sandstone gives you those flat sides, which is great, but it's porous. It soaks up water like a sponge. Not good. Granite, on the other hand, is non-porous. It's naturally waterproof. If your #1 goal is keeping something dry for centuries, granite is the obvious winner. So mystery number 1, solved.
Okay, finding the right stone was the easy part. The real challenge was the cement. I mean, could one person in the 5th century really make high-quality, waterproof cement from scratch out in the woods? The first step for the researchers was to figure out the recipe.
So it turns out, ancient cement is basically a mix of 3 key things. Lime, which is what holds it all together, sand, which gives it bulk, and clay. So now our geological detectives had a shopping list. They needed to find sources for all 3 of these things close to the hill.
Now, you don't just find lime powder sitting on the ground. You have to make it. And the ancient process is pretty wild. You find limestone, you cook it in a super hot fire till it forms these little chunks called clinkers, and then you add water. The clinkers basically explode into a fine powder, and that's your lime. That's the magic ingredient for cement.
So the researchers went looking, and just about a mile from the main hill, they found this quarry cut into another drumlin. And it was a total jackpot. It had tons of sand, and mixed right in with all the gravel were chunks of limestone. So boom, 2 ingredients right next to each other. But was the limestone any good?
They took some samples back to the lab, and this is the big aha moment. The local limestone was almost 78% calcium oxide. That's the key chemical for making really strong lime. So it wasn't just any old limestone.
It was the good stuff.
That just left one last ingredient, clay. And this was the tricky one because clay is actually pretty rare right in that spot. But about 2 miles north of the burial site, there's this smaller hill called Miners Hill. And what makes it special is that it's made almost entirely of fine clay. And just like that, all 3 ingredients were accounted for.
So what does this all mean? When you put all the pieces together, the investigation found something pretty remarkable. It wasn't just that all the materials were there, it's where they were.
Let's look at the map again, because this shows the whole story. You've got this amazing geological coincidence. The waterproof granite stones, they were right there on the hill. The high-quality limestone and sand, a short walk to the southwest. And that rare deposit of clay, a short walk to the north. Everything you would need to build a nearly indestructible stone box was all packed into one tiny, super convenient area.
You're probably wondering, so where is the box now? Well, no one knows for sure, but the most reliable accounts from the time suggest that once the plates were removed, the open box was just left to the elements, and over the years, rain, frost, and erosion probably broke it apart and washed the stones down the hill until they were eventually lost.
In the end, the investigation showed that it was absolutely, geologically possible for a box like this to have been built using only local stuff. And it leaves you with a really cool thought. Whether we're talking about a hill in New York or the dirt in your own backyard, geology isn't just about rocks. It's a record of history, of what's possible, and sometimes it's the foundation for stories that can last for centuries. What stories are written in the landscape right where you live?